Amy Pearson, founder of Being Amy, is a teacher, master coach, writer, dream analyst, and speaker who strives to make the world a better place by telling the truth in public, no apologies. Her coaching approach is irreverent, incisive, and deeply compassionate. She calls upon an eclectic use of modalities including the work, metaphor, dream analysis, and self-compassion. Amy's currently finishing up her first book, a work of creative nonfiction called Forgiving Amy. She lives in Ashland, Oregon with her husband, 3 children, 1 dog, 2 cats, 7 chickens, and 4 koi. Let me introduce you to my longtime friend and fellow coach, Amy Pearson. Amy! I am so happy to have you on here today. And I feel like we should start by telling people that we've known each other since we were 12.
Full disclosure, right?
It is just so great having longtime friends like that. But, you haven't always been focused on coaching. I mean, you have for a long time, but
Yeah.
can you tell people what led you to that purpose? Because I feel like you have a great story.
Yeah. So, I mean, for most of my life, I call myself well, let me just back up and say that I call myself a recovering approval addict with the occasional relapse. And basically, for most of my life, I spent a lot of time and energy trying to create this external appearance of perfection and likability. And the reason that I did that was because I was terrified of any kind of rejection, criticism, or judgment. And so, there are a lot of reasons why that came to pass, but ultimately I had trauma, and the way that I felt like I could feel safe in the world, feel included, was to just spend a lot of time trying to manipulate people's opinions of me in what I thought was a favorable way. But what ended up happening was that everything looked pretty great. I would say, I mean, subjectively from the outside, I'd had the house and the clothes and the appearance and the guy, and it's like, but ultimately inside I had this dark hidden secret that I hated my life. I didn't understand why I was so miserable. I couldn't stand myself. And, I always like to say that life tries to get our attention, or the universe tries to get our attention. And it starts out as a whisper. And I think I'm quoting Oprah or someone, I can't remember. But ultimately, if you're not listening, it'll hit you like a two by four on the head. And I was just too busy maintaining my facade of perfection and likability, that I wasn't listening to the universe. And so what happened with me was that I was working as a policy research analyst at a progressive think tank. And I was also 6 months pregnant with my twins, my first pregnancy, when I learned that my mother had died unexpectedly. And that was an absolute extreme shock. Talk about a 2x4 on the head. And what happened was I went into, a deep grief. But one of the things that I have learned from grieving is that in some ways, it feels like you're walking through fog, but in other ways, things become crystal clear. And for me, what became crystal clear was that I had created a life that didn't fit me. And so I admitted that to myself for the first time. And I started to give myself permission to read books that up to that point I didn't give myself permission to look at. And part of that was because my mom had passed, and she was someone that I had talked to every single day, and then all of a sudden she's not there. And so I was just like dying to know, no pun intended, where she was and what was going on. And so I started to read books about near-death experiences, and I call it my woo-woo book reading frenzy. Ultimately, it led me to a lot of self-help, personal growth types of books that I had never read before. And one of those books was a book by a woman named Martha Beck. The book is called Expecting Adam, and it was a memoir. But that book led me into learning more about who Martha Beck was. And at that time, back in 2008, I learned that she was a life coach. And even though that there weren't a lot of life coaches out there, I became really fascinated, and that type of work became really magnetic to me. And so uh, ultimately, I enrolled as a life coach, and I guess the rest is history in some ways.
Wow. And I mean, there's so much there because I think, we just turned 50. Well, we just turned
Yes,
51. I kind
yes,
of want to
yes.
stop at 50.
You
But
just turned 51.
I just turned
I've been
51.
51 for a while.
But it's like, I feel like at 51, you kind of come to this realization, like you did maybe a long time ago, where other women are saying, oh my gosh, I have only so much time left. Like, am I truly happy? Am I being who I am in the world? Or is this just a facade and I need to like take it off and become who I was made to be? And so I love that analogy. It's always very sad when it's something bad that happens. And I always like to tell people that if you're in that point right now in your life, then this will give you hope because you're there for a reason. So start diving into everything that fuels you, and it will lead you out of that fog, like you were talking about, because that's
Absolutely.
a very real feeling.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's just it's so good. I mean, yeah, I don't remember like, and now I totally like got off track, but so um, I think I was going to ask you a question, but I don't remember what it was
Well,
because
I
I
will
was
say
reflecting.
something. I'll say something to that while you're thinking of the question you're going to ask, because what you said about, having hope for any of you who are in that a predicament where you're questioning kind of what it's all for and what it's all about, and am I really living my purpose? One of the things we do as life coaches is we help individuals navigate change, as you know, from a place of power. So, you all know, or you have been that person who continuously jumps into similar types of patterns over and over again, like whack-a-mole. It's like a great example of that is, say you've been in a relationship and you're out of that relationship, but then you meet someone and it's pretty much the same version of that same person, just and so you keep coming up against these kind of similar patterns. And I think, as coaches, what we do is we help create our clients to create virtuous cycles from change versus vicious cycles. And so, a lot of times, uh, catastrophic events like the death of a loved one can lead us into that I'm back at square one type of feeling where it's like you don't know what the heck is going on. But as coaches, what we do is we help. It could be a catastrophic event, by the way, or it could be just this nagging, low-lying feeling that something has to change. This can't be all there is. And as coaches, we help our clients to navigate change. We all deal with change. We all deal with catastrophic circumstances, or other types of circumstances where we know we need to make a change, but we help people do that in a way that allows them to grow bigger, faster, stronger.
Yeah, that's so
And
good. And
those are just opportunities, right? I mean, yes, that's unpleasant and it's it's traumatizing in some ways, but
mhm.
there are also these incredible opportunities for us to grow into a more authentic version of ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. And I do have to say, I went to your Instagram. Let me just tell everybody what it is so that you can find it too. It's North period star period coaching or coach period mentoring. And Amy has some hilarious examples of
Oh,
the
good.
different
You thought they were
stages.
funny?
I thought they were hilarious.
Good.
I loved it. And honestly, I could also relate to every single one of those stages. So I feel like, yeah, it was really good. So I
Oh,
think people,
thank you so much for mentioning that, because I just started that Instagram account and I don't have a lot of followers yet. And I was like, I'm so happy with myself for my funny memes.
oh yeah, they're great. I know.
So I definitely
I
need a
know.
plug.
Well, it's funny. It's a good way to look at it in a funny way, something
Mhm.
that's very
Yeah,
serious. But yeah, you talk about getting stuck in those patterns and really becoming stronger. I love that whole philosophy of becoming stronger. So now I do kind of want to find out a little bit about the different work that you do, like the work and the dream analysis and stuff like that. Now tell me, like, how does that all play into discovering yourself and discovering your passion? Because I think everyone who's here wants to find out, how do I find out what my purpose is? And
right.
so how do you use that to help people uncover their purpose?
I just have to say how much I love my job. But one of the things that I do is I'm an instructor for a certain coach mentoring, or excuse me, a coach certification program. So Martha Beck is really the catalyst for me getting into coaching. And when I went and looked into coaching way back in 2008, she had just started a program called, I can't remember what it was called at the time, but now it's called Wayfinder Life Coach Training. And so that was the program that I went through to become certified as a coach and also master certified as a coach. A couple years later, they invited me to become an instructor for that program. And so I've been an instructor for that program since 2011, I think. But as an instructor, I get to teach these coaching tools. And the way that we think about it is, as I said, helping our clients to navigate change in a way that creates virtuous cycles. But in each of those, and you can go to the Instagram account to find out more about those various squares in the cycle. But depending on where you are, so for example, I mentioned that catastrophic event, the loss of my mother and the birth of my twins. So I got hit by a double whammy, but that was really sent me into this phase where I was like, okay, I'm literally having to dissolve my identity because everything is so different now. And I have to start to look at, ways that I used to see myself that no longer serve, things that I need to grieve. And I need to do all this really deep work in order for me to get to this energetic place where I can start to see possibility again. And so, depending, and then that would send us into a different phase of the change of this cycle of change, which would be more about kind of how do I dream myself into a new reality with new possibilities where I'm this new person now based on these things that have happened to me, and how do I do that in a way that allows me to take advantage of opportunities that present themselves. And so that's another square. And then that would send us off into taking action based on that work. Each of those squares of the change cycle have specific tools that you can use to support yourself through that. So for square one, which is all about, okay, I'm back to square one. I don't know what the heck is going on. Those are coaching tools like Byron Katie's The Work that really have you kind of sit with some of the thoughts that you're attaching to that are leading you to emotional pain that gets in the way of what you want to create, and really helps you to take that under the microscope to see if it's helping or hurting you. Do you want to keep thinking these thoughts that are getting in the way of what you want, or do you want to start letting go of some of that? So that's a square one kind of tool versus, say, something that many people might be familiar with, vision boards, or some of those kinds of fun tools that really get us kind of dreaming and thinking about possibilities and exploring what we want. We would consider that in Wayfinder coach training a square two tool, because it's really about helping to create a space where we can start to envision things that we want that may be different than what we have now. And so, it really depends. There's a lot of different coaching tools that I have in my toolbox that I bring out depending on kind of where the client is.
I think um, it's just so brilliant and so simple, but it doesn't happen all the time. I don't think that people realize they can actually create their life
Yeah.
and that they may be holding on to things and not reinventing themselves, but just living that same story over. Like, it's like you're reading a book, but you're reading the same chapter over and over and over again. But it's like, well, no, let's go to a new chapter. And I feel like there's that takes bravery. I mean, that's not
Yeah,
easy to tear
absolutely.
yourself down to build yourself back up again. But I kind of feel like every decade, as I'm now like looking back in my life, every
Mhm.
decade has kind of called a different me. And
Mhm.
as far as like, I've even had so many names like Jenny,
That-
Jennifer. I had my decade of Jennifer. Now I'm Jen. And it's like, so it's like, who am I going to be in my 50s? And then who am I going to be in my 60s? And so it's not like a one and done process either. It's like you're going to constantly be evolving and hopefully so, right? How do you help someone to see that this is kind of a ongoing process? It's not just, okay, you're done now.
Well, I mean, I think for me, the biggest, I guess, shift that really helped me to see that I could create what I wanted in my life was when I learned that you don't have to believe everything you think. I used to think that I had no idea that I could actually choose how to narrate my reality. I just kind of automatically assumed that whatever was going through my mind was my reality. And it felt like I don't quite remember where I was when I learned this, but it feels like something I should remember where I was when I learned this because it was that pivotal and transformative for me to realize that the thoughts that were going through my mind were stories and that I had access to infinite ways to narrate my life. And that really helped me to understand and kind of introduce me to the idea that everything is energy and that we can start to become our own sort of creators of, our experience, starting with our thoughts. And so that was, I think, the huge shift for me. And that is definitely something just first of all, that as a coach, there are some things that I like my clients to just understand. And, one thing is that we have control. We don't have control over our circumstances. We don't have control over, those catastrophic events we mentioned. But we definitely have control over how we choose to narrate those circumstances.
Okay, so I know that everyone listening is going to be like, okay, great. Like, get to how do I do that? Is it like there's a voice where it says, okay, today Amy wakes up and she goes and has
Yeah,
her coffee,
kind of. It can be. Yeah,
or like, what's the first step in doing that?
I think the first step is I think it's about being present with yourself because we are very busy as humans, right? Especially in this culture. It's like we are very busy and a lot of us have just been conditioned not to not to listen to ourselves because there's so many distractions, right? And so the first thing is really to start to connect back with ourselves and to start to listen to ourselves. And I think the first thing is to listen to kind of how are we reacting emotionally to our day-to-day lives, like what's happening in our bodies. I mean, emotions are essentially physical sensations in the body. It's almost like I would liken it to kind of a service light in our car, like or say you've had an injury and you're bleeding, right? That needs to be tended to. Well, a service light in the car needs to be tended to. It's the same thing when we're having physical sensations that equate to certain emotions that we're having. And some are louder than others, and some are more uncomfortable than others. But it's not to say that one emotion is better than the other. They all carry with them information. And so if we're not in the habit of listening to ourselves, say, for example, and there's no judgment, because I have definitely been this person where, say, you're experiencing a trigger and right away you go into shame or you go into fear or you go into anger. And right away, instead of allowing yourself to be present with it, because those things happen in a flash, right? You go to, I don't know, alcohol, or you go smoke a cigarette, or you turn on the TV, or you have sex. I don't know. Everybody's got their own kind of strategy. Then we're not sitting with and listening to the signals in our bodies that are telling us that we are attaching to a certain perception that's leading to emotional pain. And that emotional pain is presenting itself for a very good reason. So, one book that I really love is called The Language of Emotions by Carla McLaren. And that book really, really helped me to understand how emotions work, because say you're, for example, you're very sad, sadness tells us where we need to be letting go in our lives. Anger often is telling us where we're not advocating for ourselves or standing up for our own boundaries. So fear is letting us know that, there's something that we're attaching to, some kind of story that's leading us into a more constricted state. So all these emotions, are there for a reason to tell us things. And the first step, I think, is just giving ourselves, just starting with being with ourselves. And it's not always an easy process. I know for many of us who are used to just kind of disassociation as a pattern. As I said, it's no judgment. I've experienced all the emotional energies coming from quite a bit of trauma myself. But that is, and I would say for those who are new to that, it's really kind of just a tiptoe, or maybe dipping your toe in at first. But giving yourself that space to start listening instead of right away knee jerk kind of disassociating or numbing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of experienced that same thing too. And it was more like I felt like an analogy was, you know how after the tulips have grown and you have to cut them all back so that all the energy goes down. And I know you're a gardener, so
Yes.
you know all about
The
plants.
deer eat my tulips over here.
Well, they're so sweet though. They eat my little roses too, but I
Yeah,
just
they
love
love the roses. Oh my goodness.
it.
Don't get me
But it
going
was
on
like
that.
I felt like when I was kind of, just like hitting this really bizarre rock bottom, and I think mine had to do with menopause, honestly, but it was just an emotional roller coaster time. And I just felt like I have to trim myself back. And it's not easy though. And you live in a world where it's like busyness is considered a virtue. So if I ever write a book, it's going to be busyness is not a virtue. Because I feel like everyone is just, I'm too busy for this, I'm too busy for that, but you end up being too busy for your own life.
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially like when you are going through this rebirth or discovery process, it takes time. Sometimes you have to be in an isolation period where you're just like gathering your energy so that you can grow again. And
I love that
yeah.
metaphor.
So I like your engine light too, because yeah, it's like, and it'll blink at you yellow for so long. And then finally it'll just be like, I'm not
Yeah.
working anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. You can either burn yourself out or you can take that time for yourself. I remember a couple years ago, I had to I call it like a business elimination diet. You know how when you have allergies, you take everything out and you
Yes.
slowly start at. I did that with my business because I kept I kept trying to do things the way I'd always done them, hoping for the same results. And I wasn't conscious to this reality that I wasn't feeling energized anymore. And I just kept trying to go and go and push until I just kind of had this exhaustion happen. And I just took a step back. And I think it took me like a year and a half of really just kind of that sort of, cocooning phase before I started to feel energized again in my business. And during that time, I actually added another certification to my business, the dream analysis stuff. But yeah, I can totally relate to that. I think that the tulip is a perfect metaphor for that. But many of us don't give ourselves that space to allow for that process, and we just keep pushing and pushing and wondering what is wrong with us. When
Yeah.
that kind of energy, apathetic type of energy, is really and some might call it depression, and it's definitely a continuum. But that's another emotion that tells us when we need to stop, when we need to let ourselves breathe and start to regather our energy. And a lot of us just think, oh, something's wrong with me. Why isn't my life working? Well, uh, it may be time for you to take some space and reevaluate.
Yeah, and that's so good, the analogy of the diet where you just the
Mhm.
elimination diet,
Yeah,
because not everybody can just say, okay, I'm going to conclude myself because life is busy. But you can
yeah,
eliminate just one thing and say, are things getting better? Or are they getting worse? It's like, what am I allergic to here? This is like a discovery process. And
yeah,
then being okay to change course,
yep.
because that's just another one of those beliefs. If you believe you have to do A, B, or C, it's like, well, maybe A's not suiting you anymore, and maybe you're being called to pivot and go a different direction.
I
So
mean, I've worked with so many coaches and healers and entrepreneurs and just clients who have, really struggled because they've invested so much time and energy in one course. And then it was really hard for them to switch gears. But there are a lot of individuals who have to do that. It's like it can be, I just have the sense that I'm calling some of your audience out right now, because there are many of us who have spent so long maybe on one trajectory where it's like we've invested. And so it's like, I think there's even a psychological term for this, where we just don't want to stop because we've already gone so far that way. But I think that it really just requires us to just allow ourselves to let go of that identity. And that's again that whole change cycle conversation around, square one. It's like sometimes it's like this nagging feeling that the course that I'm on just doesn't feel right anymore. And I deserve to be happy. Why am I here if I can't be happy? And then that really requires you to go into that cocooning phase, right? And start to look at, what do I need to reevaluate in order to get on a trajectory that makes me happy? And all of us deserve that. There is a course out there for each of us that energizes us and that leads us into our purpose and allows us to live more of a joyful life. I say that out loud, even though maybe it seems obvious, but for me, I felt like that was like a myth of some kind. Like, really?
Mhm.
Like people actually live that way? But it's
Yeah, I,
real.
I think
It's
a lot of
real.
people feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're just so, like you said, they're invested in the life that they've spent maybe 20, 30 years building. Then they get to this point and they say, wait, I should be happy by now. I
Yeah.
made it to the point I wanted to make it to. Why am I not happy? And
Yeah.
so,
It
so
requires an ego death. It requires
uh,
an ego death. And that's what it is. And I've had many of those. I've had like five.
mhm. Well, and
It was
that's why
like,
I love the point. It's not just once, right?
yeah,
It's not like, okay, one, I'm good, you
yeah.
know. It's like an ongoing process. And
It's
so I love
humbling.
your,
It does. It really,
yeah,
really requires that.
yeah. Okay, so now how does the dream, tell us a little bit about how the dreams weave into this too.
Yeah, I've always been someone who's been fascinated by dreams. So I'm just one of those who has written dreams down, and I have journals and I've recorded my dreams when I can, and I don't always remember my dreams, but there's always been this feeling like, why is this happening? Like there's got to be a reason why we have these experiences every night, because I know this now, but I knew it intuitively even way back when, before I had done any dream analysis training, that we do dream even if we don't remember it. Or maybe I read it somewhere, but we dream every night. And when we do remember it, I mean, for me, it's just been this nagging feeling of like, what is this all about? There's got to be a reason. And during the sort of elimination diet, I decided to look into this guy on YouTube that I listen to. He does dream analysis on YouTube, and I enjoy his show. And so I decided to hire him and see if he could do a couple of my dreams and see how that was. And I did that, and I was really floored. And so I decided to go ahead and take some courses with him. And I really enjoyed those courses. And so ultimately I decided to join him for a year-long certification process. But what I found that is really interesting is that just just like in life, life is an experience and we have these emotions, right? As humans, we have all of the emotions. And it's sort of like any movie that you've watched where you're really engaged in the movie, you start to forget about what's happening in your external world and you just get really hooked in and you're experiencing this movie and all the emotions. Well, our lives are like that. And I believe that the reason why we're here experiencing this life is so that we can learn. It's like we have opportunities, we have these challenges and struggles, just like any kind of really good, character in a book, right? You've got these antagonistic forces that the hero has to deal with, and the hero can either navigate those well and become bigger, faster, stronger, or they lose their opportunity, right? Like something, they just kind of, they fall into grief or they get into addictive habits, or they just kind of stay in stagnation in the whack-a-mole mode where they're just kind of bumping up against the same patterns, right? And so that's life. And life, I think, is this opportunity for us to take these challenges and learn something from the challenges and then grow from those challenges. Well, what I learned when I started to really get into dream work and studying dreams is that there's a reason why we dream in these kind of they're sort of like mini movies, and
Mhm.
we're meant to be experiencing them in a similar way that we would life, where it's like you move through this kind of experience in a dream and you have opportunities to either pass the dream and then or you kind of fail the dream and then you keep dreaming about the similar themes. But if you pass the dream, then your dreams start to change and they start to tell you different things. And so it's very similar to our life experience. And I really love dream work because I've done a lot of different healing modalities as a coach. I've done a lot of different things to help myself grow and heal and navigate change. But one thing I think that I've run up against as a limitation is that there's only so much you can do from the conscious mind because we all have blind spots. And dreams are this wonderful way for us to access information about ourselves and ways that we're getting in our own way. Not to mention kind of information about our purpose and even gifts that we have that maybe we're not using. Dreams will tell us that. And so for me, working in dreams has uncovered a lot that I was not aware of, but it has really kind of launched my spiritual progress and my healing in ways that I could have never imagined in a framework of time that is really, really extraordinary, given all of the amount of time that I spent over the years doing healing modalities through the conscious mind.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is so crazy. I mean, I think you're
crazy.
right. I don't remember a lot of my dreams. But I know I'm dreaming, but I don't remember them. So how are your dreams helping you if you don't remember the dream? Is it somehow sticking in there
Yeah.
subconsciously
It
and
still does. It still does. So, as an example, I take clients through a multi-week healing experience using dreams. And sometimes, my clients will will tell me that they're experiencing a lot of anger, but they're not remembering their dream. And so it's like the dream will offer information to you when you're sleeping, but whatever that information is, it gets through to us in our waking lives. We're just not aware of it. And so when we can intercept the dreams with our conscious mind, it becomes all the more powerful. And so there's definitely things you can do if you're not someone who remembers a lot of dreams. I can share a few tips. I'm sure people are curious now since we're
yeah, yeah, for
talking
sure.
about it. Yeah. So there's definitely some things you can do. And the other thing to keep in mind too, I know speaking personally and because I've had a lot of clients now, is that we go through phases where sometimes things are just easier, dreams are easier to grab. But that said, one of the most powerful things you can do is just start to set strong intentions before you go to sleep. So I'm setting the intention that I will remember my dream. And I will do that just very consciously before I go to sleep. The other thing is to, one of the really cool things that you can do, and I'm just someone who gets up frequently in the middle of the night anyway, but if you're a sound sleeper, one thing you can do, if you're really committed to remembering your dreams, is to set an alarm a little bit before you typically wake up. So if you set an alarm for like an hour early and you just get up to go to the bathroom, and then you set that strong intention to remember your dreams, then chances are when you wake up, you will remember something. And so you can play with that. The other thing to do is just to start recording your dreams, even if you only get like the hint of something, or say you only remember a tiny little dream fragment. What I have found is that it signals a message to whatever part of your consciousness helps you to remember dreams, that you're committed now. And then you'll start to record more dreams. And the more that happens, the more your memory will start to ramp up. And that can be really, that can be a powerful way to start getting your dream recall up.
Wow, it's so crazy. The only dream that I've ever had, that's recurring over and over and over, is that I'm like able to fly up into the sky. And the last time I had that dream, I was at like a seminar, and everyone was watching me, and I was like, oh, watch this. And then I could fly. And then I was so scared because I was like, okay, I got to come back down, because I kind of just like, it pulls me up, and then I have to consciously like try to get back down to the ground. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it seems so weird.
Well, the flying dreams often they're about your spiritual gifts. So if you're dreaming a lot about flying, or if you can easily fly in your dreams, it typically means that you have the ability to see things from a bigger perspective. And not only that, but you have the gift of being able to project your mind. So what that means is that you can people like that typically are very persuasive. They can, I have a, a little bit of that, but it can help when you're a coach, actually, when you're trying to project a safe space for people to feel safe talking to you. You have to be careful if if this is good, some people this might not resonate with some people, but what I have heard is that if you have that gift and you are thinking negatively about people, you have to be careful, because you have the power potentially to impact people in a negative way. And so you have to be careful. But it's good for people who work with forms of hypnosis or sales, or any type of persuasive type of career as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So like looking back over all of the stuff that you've done, because you've been in this a long time, what would you say is like the number one thing, the number one step that people can take if they're like, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know how to find my purpose.
Mm.
Where do they look first? Do they start analyzing their dreams first, or do they do the elimination diet first, or what do they do first?
Well, I mean, dream work can definitely help. I mean, I don't think anyone who's looking for purpose and is interested in that modality can go wrong, because dream work is a powerful way to kind of get clarity around your purpose. One thing that my dreams told me was that I am what's called a guide for other guides. And basically, what it means to be a guide is that you're here to help, I guess, help expand the consciousness in a positive way of humanity. And so I'm someone who's here to work with others who are here, and support others who are here that want to help expand the consciousness of humanity in a positive way. And that really clarified things for me, because for the longest time I was sort of like, I shouldn't be helping coaches. That's too easy. I had this idea that somehow things had to be harder, which is, a form of a limiting belief, right? That we attach to. But now I'm so happy, because it resonates so strongly with me to serve people who are here to be in service of others. But that was information that came through very clearly in my dreams. So it kind of like was something I suspected, but I had resisted. So dreams can be powerful, but the other thing too, kind of along the lines of what we said before, is tapping into what it is that we're tapping into yourself. And there's this in one of my favorite books that really launched me into coaching, was a book by Martha Beck called Finding Your Own North Star. And I would say I think it is her first sort of self-help type personal development book, but it's just packed full of wonderful tidbits for anyone who's interested in this topic. But one of the things that she said was, she called this thing the urge to merge. And what it is it's like, if you've ever had that kind of feeling where you're like strangely attracted to something, and it doesn't mean like romantically necessarily, but it could be, but it's really about like, oh, for some odd reason, I want to watch that movie, or I want to go to that event, or I want to read that book. And it's easy, because it's easy for the conscious mind to talk yourself out of it. So as an example, I remember I had just had the twins, and they were 18 months. So, I had my hands full. And for some reason, I remember driving by this little thing in Portland where they had that one of those like A-frame signs out, and it was like, it said psychic fair. And I was like, oh, I don't know why. I really want to check that out. But I remembered in my logic mind, I was like, what? That's so dumb. That's so weird. What are you going? You have no business going there, and that's crazy. And your kids are young, and I could have easily let my logical mind talk me out of it. But I remember I had just read Finding Your Own North Star, and I was familiar with this concept. And so I allowed myself, I figured out how to get the childcare, and I went to this psychic fair, and they were doing like these little mini kind of readings. And every reading that I went to, they said, you're a healer, you're a healer, you're a healer. And that's what Martha Beck says. She says that if you allow yourself to follow the urge to merge, even if it's strange or illogical, there will be information there, sort of like breadcrumbs in a forest, that will lead you to your purpose. And so I am now doing healing work using dreams. It's the work that I take people through is absolutely 100% healing work, not to mention all the work that I do as a coach. And so, that was information that was pivotal to me, sort of kind of navigating my way, steering my way towards what it was that I was meant to do. Because before that, I had been working in policy research, which really felt like swimming against the stream for me. So,
well,
all
I
the
love
urge to
what you,
merge.
yeah, I love the urge to merge, and because that totally makes sense to me. And I think that people do, they can so easily apply logic to their feelings and be like, no, why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
And so that is a great first step, I feel like, is just getting people aware to be intentional about what are you wanting to steer the ship this way, but everything is fighting you to turn the ship. And
Yeah.
maybe just see what happens if you investigate something else. I love that urge to merge. And then you also said something else that I think is so important. And that was when you said, well, that seemed like the easy thing to do. And I feel like so many people are like, nah, that's too easy.
Yes.
Whereas maybe it's easy for you because
Yeah.
that's what you're supposed to do.
Yes.
And and so I love that whole thing. I spent so much time like always wanting to, I was always listening to Tony Robbins and all those people. Now there's even more of those people that I just love listening to all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, gosh, I want to be able to impact people like this. I want to be a positive force in the world. And it was one day I was looking through this book and it said something to the effect of, like God wants to give you the desires of your heart. He wants you to do what you want to do even more than you want you to do, and so it's just
Yes.
like, I loved the realization because this whole time I'd been like, oh God, please let me be able to be an influence. Oh God,
Yeah.
please. And he's like, well, finally, I already made you for that. Stop praying for it and just do
Right.
it.
Yeah. It reminds me of that. He sent you a raft. He sent you a helicopter,
Exactly.
I've
Yeah.
also heard it said, what you want wants you back. And
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
beautiful because yeah, I mean, I think I did what a lot of people did, which was compare myself to other people and then, believe that I had to be that in order to be worthy or important or, to feel safe in the world or get love, right? And, all this time I had all these passions and interests and curiosities that brought me joy. But I spent so much time trying to construct this facade because I felt like I had to be this way in order to get what I needed or to get what, how I needed to get love. And in reality, I just needed to listen to myself. And that's, I think, what we are doing here.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll just tell you because not every person has, is having a conversation right now, but the same way about the people who are listening, trying to be something else is like, I know you, gosh, I mean, a long
Yeah.
time, since we were 12. And you're such a unique person. It wouldn't be fair to the world if you weren't Amy. You
Wow.
have to be 100% Amy.
Thank
And so I feel like everyone needs a cheerleader on their side to be like, hey, be you. The world needs you,
Yeah.
and don't try to be someone else. And the right people and things will be attracted to you if you're just you.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that I call the 1/3 rule. And it's basically if you divide the entire universe in thirds, there are three groups. And one group is called the haters. And it's sort of like, no matter what you do, no matter how much you prepare or all the time you spend kind of trying to get everything right, they're just going to be that person, right? They're going to unsubscribe to your emails. They won't like your podcast. They're going to, they're just, they're going to, they're just, going to bum you out. Then
Yeah.
there's this other third, and no matter what you do, they're always going to be neutral. So it's sort of like no matter how hard you try, they're just going to take you or leave you, and I have quite a few family members like this. So it was a really hard one for me to get over because I wanted all my family to be so interested in everything I did and ask about it. And they were like, "Oh, how's that thing you're doing? Oh, okay, cool. What's on TV, right?" And it's like, but there's this other third, and that third are your people. And it's sort of like we spend most of our time, or at least I know I did, expending all my energy trying to win over the haters and win over the neutrals, who are always going to be haters and always going to be neutrals no matter what we do. And in the process, becoming invisible to our people, where we've changed ourselves so much to win over these people who are not going to be won over. And then our people can't even recognize us.
Yeah. You just said my word of the year, which is invisible, because
Mm,
that's one of the things I feel like is wrong with this world is that people are walking around and I don't feel like I'm visible. If
mm,
you go through an airport, no one looks at each other anymore. No one smiles. No one says, how are you? It's like, and so my mission is to change the world so that people feel seen and known and not by everyone, not by the 2/3 that aren't going to like them or care for them anyways, but yes, I guess just finding your people so that you can feel visible and seen because I think that's what everyone's longing for is they
yeah.
just want to be seen and then that's probably how we change the world is to
Mm,
I don't know, I guess because everyone just wants to have that sense of belonging and um yeah, crazy.
yeah.
I totally
Yeah.
resonate with that statement as you got to find your people. And yeah, it's so important too. And it's like, where do you look sometimes? But it's by following that urge to merge, because that's going to lead you to your people.
Absolutely. 100%.
Mhm.
I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, well, Amy, oh my gosh, thank you. It's been a hour.
I know. How did that happen? Time just like flew. I mean, that's crazy.
I know, but you laid down some great wisdom that I feel like can help anyone. And so tell us where to find you. Your website is beingamytheblog.com.
Yes.
And then your Instagram is north period star period coach period mentoring.
Hmm.
And do you want to talk a little bit about the free course, the free course that you have?
Sure. So I also have a class that is available for free. It's a 90-minute workshop. It's all about mind clutter, and it's specifically for individuals who consider themselves coaches or healers or some other service-based type of entrepreneur, or really just anyone who needs a dose of courage. One of the things that I also learned is one of my gifts is that I infuse people with courage. And so many of us need a lot of courage in order to do our thing in the world in our own authentic way. And so I have this course. It's really just a 90-minute workshop, and it's all about mind clutter that helps people to kind of identify what they're believing or attaching to that is getting in the way of them taking action in the world. And so that's over at mindcluttersucks.com. So if you go there, you can put your email address in and your name, and that'll give you access to that class. And you'll also be on my email list, so you'll be able to stay in touch with me. I love to blog, and I'm also working on a book. So yeah, I like to kind of source my own vulnerabilities and struggles and things that I'm learning in my own life, and share that with my community.
Yeah, I love that because I love real people. So I think it's important because everyone is dealing with things on a regular basis. And so it's good just to talk about it and be
Endless
real.
professional development.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Amy. It's been so great. I'm glad that everyone could get to know you. And
Thanks for having me. It's been so fun. I'll be back
yeah,
anytime you want me to.
okay. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.